Picture a sunlit woodland on ancient Asian floodplains. Dust hangs in the air, cicadas buzz, and the ground trembles before anything appears. Then a head rises above the trees, a calm, slate-gray colossus. This is Paraceratherium, the hornless giant rhinoceros that stood taller than a two-story house and reached into the canopy like a living crane. It wasn't a dinosaur. It wasn't an elephant. It was a leaf specialist with a surgeon's reach, built to browse where other mammals couldn't. If size is a weapon, Paraceratherium wielded it quietly, turning height into a feeding superpower. Start at the feet, because the secret to a giant is the ground. Paraceratherium carried up to around 11 to maybe 15 tons on columnar legs, with 3 broad toes splayed on each foot for stability. Think shock absorbers for mud and sand. Those limbs weren't flashy sprinters. They were long-striding, load-bearing pillars, ideal for steady travel. Above them, a deep chest anchored massive muscles and a long neck that reached several meters. That neck wasn't just for show. It worked like a vertical conveyor belt, lifting a head into clean air and fresh leaves. Follow the head, and you find a mystery that leaves a clue. The nasal bones are set back, suggesting a flexible upper lip, maybe even a short trunk. The front teeth are small. The cheek teeth are low-crowned and ridged for slicing leaves rather than grinding grass. Jaw joints align for powerful closing strokes, not side-to-side shearing like a grazer. Tooth wear and chemistry point to a browser's menu. Soft shoots, twigs, the occasional tough branch. Paraceratherium didn't mow a lawn. It snipped a high garden, one careful mouthful at a time. Here's the first twist. That enormous size wasn't just about reaching high. It was a drought plan. A body that big carries a huge fermenting gut, basically a slow-cooking leaf reactor, able to pull calories from mediocre foliage when times get lean. With long legs and a patient stride, Paraceratherium could roam between green pockets as seasons shifted. Tooth enamel stores chemical snapshots of those shifts, showing a steady C3 leaf diet through changing conditions. Giant mass, long range, slow fuel. It's the opposite of flashy speed. Endurance ecology written in bone and enamel. But how do we know how big is big? Paleontologists scale mass from limb bone circumference. The thicker the load-bearing shafts, the higher the weight. Paraceratherium's femurs and humeri are outrageously stout. Neck vertebrae the size of suitcases, locked together like stacked drums. In places like Darabugti in Pakistan, bone beds hold multiple individuals, letting researchers compare growth stages and extremes. Under a microscope, the bones show dense remodeling from a long-lived, heavily built mammal. It all agrees. This wasn't a tall giraffe with hollow bones. It was solid engineering, kilometer after kilometer. Now imagine a day in its life. Dawn, cool air, low mist. Paraceratherium moves the way a hill would move if it could, quiet and unhurried. It noses into river-edge trees, curling that flexible lip to strip a cluster of leaves, then another, then another. Midday, it finds shade and rests, heat sinking slowly into that massive core. Toward evening, it wanders again, crossing dry channels and dusty flats to another green ribbon of woodland. Social life? Probably loose. An adult here, a subadult there. Close enough to see one another, far enough that food doesn't run short. Second twist, no horn. For a rhinoceros, that sounds like missing a headline, but it's actually a design choice. Horns add weight to the head and neck. Heavy heads limit reach and demand more blood pressure and bone. Paraceratherium stripped that bulk away. Its skull is long but surprisingly light, with big muscle attachments behind the eyes. Not thick bosses for ramming. Its best defense? Height, mass, and the ability to simply not be where a problem is. In a pinch, a shoulder shove from an animal this size is a wall in motion. The smartest fight is the one you never need. Let's map its world. Paraceratherium bones turn up from western China to Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and down into Pakistan. Huge swaths of Oligocene Asia. That means it wasn't a local oddity. It tracked corridors of woodland along rivers and seasonal lakes, passing through mosaics of open forest and scrub. Different sites reveal slightly different species within the group, but the family look is unmistakable. Tall shoulders, long neck, hornless skull, browsing teeth. The spread tells us it tolerated a range of climates, from cooler uplands to warmer lowlands, so long as there was height in the vegetation. Now the payoff? When Paraceratherium fed, it edited the forest. High leaves clipped, branches bent, young trees pruned. Its reach created light gaps that changed which plants thrived below. Its gut moved seeds far across the landscape, wrapped in nutrient-rich packages that jump-started seedlings in new patches. Microwear on the teeth, fine scratches and pits, backs this up as selective browsing rather than grass grinding. It wasn't just living in the ecosystem. It was a quiet engineer, rearranging the canopy and planting tomorrow's cover one slow walk at a time. Time to cut a myth down to size. Was this giant slow and clumsy? It wasn't built to sprint, but clumsy doesn't fit the bones. The lower legs are relatively slim for something so huge, a sign of efficient motion. Joints are broad and stable, shaped for long periods on the move. A gallop is unlikely at that mass, but an energy-saving walk that eats up ground? Very likely. Big animals win at distance and persistence. Picture steady travel between groves day after day, with a head high enough to scan for the next green band along a dry valley. How do we rebuild an animal this size from scattered parts? Carefully and with math. Paleontologists align vertebrae to set neck posture, compare limb joints to modern rhino relatives for range of motion, and scale muscles from attachment scars. Older papers used the name Oligocene for some finds. Today, Paraceratherium is the umbrella for these hornless giants. Digital scans let teams test poses, balance, and mass across the skeleton. If a neck position breaks joint limits, it gets tossed. What's left is a living outline that fits physics, bones, and the wear written into the teeth. Zoom into the heat and water budget, because giants run on thermodynamics. With a huge volume and relatively smaller surface area, Paraceratherium shed heat slowly. That likely pushed it to move most in the cool hours. Dust baths would help control skin parasites. Shade and rivers were magnets. Water needs were high but not frantic. A big fermenting gut recycles moisture well. In the dry season, it could browse tougher leaves higher up, keeping cool heads literally above the competition. When storms broke, it followed new chutes along the river margins like a calm gray tide. What about the youngest giants? A newborn Paraceratherium would still tower over most animals, but it started life under that skyscraper shadow. Gestation in rhinos today runs well over a year. For a giant browser, more time is a good bet. Fewer calves, bigger investment. A mother's body blocked wind and sun. The safest place was on the downwind side of a guardian that weighed more than a truck. Learning to use the flexible lip started early. Small practice bites at eye level, then gradually higher, following the mother's menu, one branch at a time. There's a quiet consequence to high browsing. It keeps pathways open. Paraceratherium likely snapped small branches simply by passing through, leaving trails that other animals favored, and edges where sun-loving plants thrived. Its dung seeded those edges, and its pruning shaped which trees pushed new shoots. In life, it looked like relentless appetite. In hindsight, it looks like landscaping on a continental scale. Soft edits in dozens of woodlands across millions of years. Remove the giant, and the brush thickens, new winners take over, the sound of the woods changes. So why did the hornless giant fade? The climate tilted. Through the Oligocene into the early Miocene, grasslands expanded across parts of Asia as conditions cooled and dried in pulses. Low-crowned teeth are bad news on gritty silica-rich grasses. Canopy patches shrank and spread out. Crossing long, open gaps challenged young animals and made the food map harsher. Paraceratherium played the height game better than any mammal in history, but when the latter, the trees, moved out of reach, the strategy unraveled. In the end, size couldn't outwalk a changing world. Stand under the imagined canopy one last time. Wind moves the top leaves. A giant gray head slides into view. The forest parts without a sound. Paraceratherium didn't roar or charge its way into legend. It reached, paced, and edited the world with quiet, deliberate choices. Height over horns, endurance over speed, patience over drama. The largest land mammal ever built did its work with a careful mouth and a long view. If you could watch 5 minutes of its life, would you pick the dawn feed, the river crossing, or the quiet shade at noon?